I want to tell my millions of followers, we're here to educate you guys. I hope your questions have been answered. And let's just get more educated. Please, let's put our focus on these terms elections, because I don't think people understand how serious it is.
Cardi, can I just say one thing before we get off? A lot of people moan and groan, right? They don't like Donald Trump. They don't like the low wages. They don't like spending 50% of their income in housing. They don't like student debt. They don't like the fact they can't go to college. But all of that moaning and groaning and complaining doesn't mean anything unless we change the system, okay? Young people have got to get involved in the political process. Register to vote. It is not hard. It takes you 5 minutes. Register to vote. Trump does not want people of color to be participating in the political process. Participate in the political process. And then think about who the candidate is that is speaking the issues that are important to you, and then vote. If we have young people voting in large numbers, you know what? I have zero doubt but that Donald Trump will be defeated.
But thank you so much, Bernie.
Thank you so much.
Let's feel the burn.
Wasn't that fantastic, guys? Wasn't that whole chat with Cardi B just really inspiring? Both what Bernie said, but also what Cardi said. I think it was a really enlightening discussion about the challenges regular people face and how Bernie Sanders is the candidate to deal with it, and how the way you deal with it by defeating Donald Trump and building a progressive alternative is by energizing those populations that don't vote. Often the Democrats are fixated on winning that moderate Republican, or that moderate Democrat, that Trump-Clinton swing voter, if you will. But the reality is that the USA has really low voter turnout, in comparison to many Western nations. And so there are a lot of accessible voters that don't vote for anybody, that don't vote for Trump or Clinton because they didn't vote for anybody. And so Bernie Sanders, I think, is making a great point, that when you energize marginalized people and when you energize young people, populations that have progressive values generally, but yet do not vote in the sort of numbers that boomers do, then you will bring in positive change. And so Bernie's whole program, most of his program at least, is really aimed at energizing and inspiring young people. Better access to education, better access to healthcare, better access to pensions, better access to jobs in general, but good jobs, union jobs. All of these things would benefit, boomers and Gen Xers and everybody, but I think millennials in particular, who are struggling in this economy, are most receptive to Bernie's message, and they need Bernie's message most of all. And it is a generation that doesn't vote as much as the older folks do, even though they're increasingly becoming the biggest voting bloc. That's where we're at right now. We need to energize our fellow young people and get them to the gosh darn polls. And you don't do it by, Hillary Clinton being like, I hope they Pokemon go to the polls. No, you do it by actually offering something they want. Not just an opposition to something they hate, like Donald Trump, but a positive message about what they need and want and hope for. Bernie Sanders is offering that. And Bernie isn't just offering that in this isolated policy discussion. It's not just purely academic or wonkish for Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders understands that this is also part of the rhetoric and the theme of a campaign. And this is why Bernie sat down for a chat with Cardi B. She's an incredibly influential artist who has fans probably of all demographics and generations, but who likely has a fan base centered around young people, people of color, those sorts of people that need to get to the polls. And likewise, when Bernie Sanders went on to Joe Rogan, he was speaking to the millions of men, overwhelmingly men, many of them young, who need a coherent political message. And many of them are perhaps, enchanted by the right for one reason or another. But I think a lot of those young men, when they heard Bernie Sanders' understanding of democratic socialism and justice and fairness, were at least intrigued, and many were won over. A lot of people said, why is he wasting his time on Joe Rogan's show? But you see almost 10 million views now, and plenty of impressionable young men that are willing to hear him out. Joe Rogan has this perception of having all these different voices on his show, so Bernie going on there helps with that whole process. at the end of the day, whether it was with Joe Rogan or whether it was with Cardi B, Bernie Sanders is demonstrating that he will go where young people are. This is not Bernie saying, here's my policies, young people, come to me. Although he's offered his policies and young people have come to him. We saw that in 2016 and we're still seeing that today. Young people love Bernie Sanders. But Bernie Sanders is not a regular politician. He will go to young people. He'll go on their podcasts. He'll talk to their favorite artists. Because he realizes that when he does this, he's going into the communities of the people he intends to help. But also, these are the people that he needs to access to win. And frankly, the Democrats need to access more broadly if they want to defeat Trump. Again, a lot of people have made the point, and I don't think it's 100% wrong, that some of the Democrats' success in 2018 in the midterms were based off flipping moderate voters. And I'm not saying there's no role in winning over former Trump voters. But we have to realize that the reason Hillary Clinton lost more than anything else is she couldn't get the same people who came out to vote for Obama to vote for her. Sure, she lost some Obama voters to Trump, and that's got to sting, and that's probably one of the reasons she lost some of those narrow races in the, Rust Belt states. But if she could have generated Obama's turnout, even some of Obama's voters flipping to Trump, it wouldn't have mattered. She would have won by millions more and would have won the Electoral College. And the Democrats may well have flipped the House and maybe even the Senate, all just off higher turnout. Look, the United States is not a country where 90, 95, 100% of the people vote regularly in elections. And so the whole game isn't based on flipping the other team's voters to your side. It's not all about this red-blue switching game. There's a whole bunch of people who are nothing in formal political terms, yet have progressive values. Maybe they don't even know they have progressive values. A lot of Joe Rogan's listeners, maybe they don't identify as progressives. But Bernie Sanders' values have deep and broad appeal. It's why when he went on Fox News, everyone said that was a bad idea. And he came out of that lion's den with more support than he left. Because he was able to go to these people who had been entrenched in Fox News's, ecosystem for generations in some cases, and say to them, what's so bad about universal human dignity and about workers getting their fair share and about the rich paying a little bit more to ensure all of my rest of my program? These things are universally popular. Bernie Sanders understands that, but you gotta go to people. You have to go to folks where they are. So Bernie isn't just a standard politician. He puts his money where his mouth is, and he puts his ideals where his mouth is, and he puts his infrastructure and his campaign power, behind his message. So a lot of people thought the Joe Rogan thing and the Cardi thing was bad, and some people thought maybe it was cute, but it wasn't really that important. But I think this is actually incredibly important. Bernie going into these venues is incredibly vital. And even if Bernie doesn't win, I still think Bernie's going to take this campaign. I think he's going to be the next president. I certainly think he's going to be the next nominee. But even if Bernie doesn't, I think a lot of the other Democratic candidates would benefit from this moment. Benefit from seeing what Bernie's doing, going to talk to young people in their spaces, with their celebrities, with their cultural and political and social icons. At the end of the day, the next election is about defeating Donald Trump and the wider ideology of Trumpism. But you're not just going to be able to do that through flipping votes. There's a broad, diverse, largely marginalized group of millions of Americans who do not vote. Some of that is based on disenfranchisement and all of those sorts of things. And I don't want to downplay that. I don't want to downplay the aspects of voter suppression in the United States. I'm aware of the fact that there are people who cannot vote because of broken systems. And Bernie wants to challenge many of those as well. But there are tens of millions of people who could vote but don't. And I'm not blaming them. I'm saying that for so long they didn't have somebody who spoke about their issues in their language, in their spaces. They have that with Bernie Sanders, and that's why he's a special candidate, and that's why, when he's president, he's going to build it on a coalition that hasn't been seen since the days of FDR.